Hello there, everyone. So, this is our Monday's reading session. As you know by now, it's our Acquire a Fine, and we are going to be analysing a text. So, picking it apart, trying to understand it, seeing what words we like, seeing what phrases and description we like, and seeing which things we might need to go away and just check what they mean. Basically, give ourselves a bit more of an understanding of this text. So, the very first thing we need to do is read the text. So, we've got ourselves The Lord of the Rings. Now, Mrs. Curran has picked this one as she thinks it's a really good one for us to have a look at in Year 5 in terms of the language that's being used. So, The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien is one of the most popular novels ever written. Approximately 150 million copies have been sold since it was published in the 1950s. In this extract, Gandalf, who's a wizard, is travelling to the city of Minas Tirith with Pippin, who's a hobbit. So, here we are. So we've got Pippin, who's a hobbit, and I can tell you a bit more. No, I won't tell you anymore. No, I see, because I know the films and I've read the books myself. So I won't tell you anything else. I'm just going to read it. Pippin looked out from the shelter of Gandalf's cloak. He wondered if he was awake or still sleeping, still in the swift-moving dream in which he had been wrapped so long since the great ride began. The dark world was rushing by, and the wind sang loudly in his ears. He could see nothing but the wheeling stars, and away to his right vast shadows against the sky, where the mountains of the south marched past. Sleepily he tried to reckon the times and stages of their journey, but his memory was drowsy and uncertain. Right, next paragraph we're here. There had been the first ride at terrible speed without a halt, and then in the dawn he had seen a pale gleam of gold, and they had come to the silent town and the great empty house on the hill. And hardly had they reached its shelter when the winged shadow had passed over once again, and men wilted with fear. But Gandalf had spoken soft words to him, and he had slept in a corner, tired but uneasy, dimly aware of comings and goings, and of men talking and Gandalf giving orders, and then again riding into the night. This was the second, no, the third night since he had looked in the stone, and with that hideous memory he woke fully and shivered, and the noise of the wind became filled with menacing voices. A light kindled in the sky, a blaze of yellow fire behind dark barriers. Pippin cowered back, afraid for a moment, wondering into what dreadful country Gandalf was bearing him. He rubbed his eyes, and then he saw that it was the moon rising above the eastern shadows, now almost at the full. So the night was not yet old, and for hours the dark journey would go on. He stirred and spoke. "Where are we, Gandalf?" he asked. "In the realm of Gondor," the wizard answered. "The land of Anorion," I think that's how it said, "is still passing by." There was a silence again for a while, and then— "What is that?" cried Pippin suddenly, clutching at Gandalf's cloak. "Look! Fire! Red fire! And are there dragons in this land? Look! There's another!" And it's an extract from the final Lord of the Rings book, The Return of the King. So, there might be quite a bit in there that you might not follow, but let's have a little look at it together. So Pippin looked out from the shelter of Gandalf's cloak. Well, straight away, that tells me Pippin feels safe. Oops. Just hiccup, sorry. Pippin feels safe. The fact that it's shelter. Shelter is always a positive thing. You've found shelter. He wondered if he was awake or still sleeping, so maybe he's a little bit confused. Perhaps. Still in the swift-moving dream. Swift-moving. Well, that's fast. If something is swift, it's fast. In which he had been wrapped so long since the great ride began. Since the great ride began. That means they've been going a long time. Perhaps. The dark world was rushing by, and the wind sang loudly in his ears. I love that. The wind sang loudly in his ears. Good bit of personification, that. I'm going to put a smiley face there because I like that. He could see nothing but the wheeling stars. Now, a wheel is turning, isn't it? Remember back at the start of Year 5 when we talked about geocentric and heliocentric, Remember, geocentric at first, people believed the stars turned around the Earth like a wheel. Okay, so he's seeing the stars move night after night, or through the night. And away to his right, vast shadows against the sky, where the mountains of the south. I love that. Now, you might think, well, how can mountains march past? Mountains are still. But you got to think he's moving. So when you're in the car, if you ever sit in the car and you look out the window as you're driving, everything's rushing past, isn't it? It's marching past. That's going past. Now that's going past. That, and it's in one line, isn't it? Soldiers march in a line. So these mountains are constantly marching past him. But they're not moving, it's him that's moving. Okay? Sleepily, he tried to reckon the time. So reckon is to try and recognize, trying to understand the time and stage of their journey. But he was drowsy and uncertain. There had been the first ride, and this bit here is kind of like a recollection of what's happened. So there had been the first ride at terrible speed without halt. So that means without stopping. Halt means to stop. And then in the dawn, he had seen a pale gleam of gold come to a silent town and the great empty house on a hill. Well, that's easy enough. They've stopped at a place. They hadn't reached its shelter when the winged shadow passed over, and men wilted with fear. What is this winged shadow? Men fear it. Wilted with fear is brilliant. Wilted is what a flower does. I think we've had the word wilted already. It means to shrivel up. So when you're scared, you shrivel up, don't you? You cower, you try and hide away, protect your body. So the men have wilted away like a petal. But Gandalf spoke soft words to him, and he slept in a corner. Now, I find this really strange. He slept in the corner while all this was happening. Gandalf spoke soft words, and he slept in the corner. Remember, Gandalf is a wizard. What did he say? Was it a spell? Maybe. Don't know. And he was dimly aware, so not very aware, of things that were happening. Gandalf was giving orders. So Gandalf's rocked up, and all of a sudden, he's telling everyone what to do. Then they've ridden again. Second, no, the third. That shows that he's lost track. He's lost track of days. Third, no. Second, no. Third, no. Fourth, not sure. Since he had looked in the stone. Now, what is that? What is that about? And with the hideous memory, he fully woke, shivering, filled with. The wind became filled with menacing voices. I love that. So that last bit here is telling us all about the stone. So he's remembered something he's done. He's looked into a stone, and the wind filled with voices. His hideous memory woke him. This has got to be bad. Whatever the stone is, it's got to be bad. Light kindled. Now remember, kindle is like a small glow. Because when you make a fire, you have kindling, which is the small wood, and that helps it to start. Pippin cowered, afraid for a moment, wondering what dreadful country got of it. Yep, okay. Rubbed his eyes. The moon was rising, almost full, so almost a full moon. The night was not yet old. Well, if it's not old, it's young. So how can a night be young? Well, it's early in the night. Just like the day is still young. You've still got lots to do in the day. And I think that's all we can pick apart at the moment. You might have some questions in there. I can't put questions in because I understand. I know the book, so I can't add as many questions in there. But hopefully this has helped you understand some of the sentences. Okay. If you're finding this text really tricky, if you've watched the video, just click hand in and just leave your message saying I watched the video, Mr. Cooper. Fine, brilliant. If you find it really tricky, if you think, oh, I've got some extra questions, jot those down. Simple as that, guys. Okay? So, well done with that. Thanks for listening and following along. Hopefully, might just be understanding that a little bit better now, ready for Thursday. But well done, guys.